Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today I have for you probably my favourite thing I've baked so far on this channel, and I'm going to be making a letter cake. Now these are sort of like layered sponge cakes with icing in the middle and really, elaborately decorated. They're all over the internet right now and Pinterest and Instagram and everything, so I really wanted to give them a go and found out there aren't really many recipes for them out there for just a normal sponge cake. So I thought I would give it a go and share with you what I found. So you want to preheat your oven to 190 degrees Celsius or 170 degrees Celsius for a fan oven. So first of all, I'm just going to be making some plain sponge. Now I'm going to be making 2 trays worth of plain sponge. Now what I figured out was that the recipe I was using was basically twice as much as I needed. So I've halved everything in the recipe down in the description that I'm adding here. So please be aware that what I'm making here will make 2 tray bakes, not 1. So what I'm doing is I'm creaming together 200 grams of butter and 200 grams of caster sugar, and once that's all creamed together I'm adding 2 eggs and 4 tablespoons of milk. In this part of the video you'll see that I did initially think that the mixture was curdling. It turns out it wasn't curdling, I just wasn't whisking it high enough and getting the butter mixed in enough. So don't worry if you think it's curdling, just keep mixing and it will work out absolutely fine. Now all of those wet ingredients are mixed together, I am sifting in 200 grams of self-raising flour and 1 teaspoon of baking powder. So as you can see, I'm just folding in that flour mixture. So if you have 2 trays that you're going to pop your letter bake into, making double what I have put in the recipe down below would be ideal. Then you can fill each tray at the same time and bake them both at the same time in the oven. I only had 1 tray in which to do this, so I had to make a batch, pop it in the oven, make another batch ready for when the other one came out of the oven so I could put that batch in, if that makes sense. So in total I did do 2 batches of the sponge cake. You want the mixture to fall off the spoon, so when you lift the spatula or spoon up in the air, you want the mixture to sort of run off it. If it doesn't, keep adding 1 tablespoon at a time of milk until it does do that. Then you want to grab your pre-lined baking tin and you want to pour your mixture into there. Now again, I'll remind you, be aware, this is too much mixture for this tin. I didn't know before, but now I do. This is double the amount of mixture that you would need for a tin this size. So please be aware, the mixture should not come up to the top of the tin. If it does, then it's going to rise too much because it's got self-raising flour and baking powder in it. So this is a cake that is going to rise quite a fair bit. So about half full sort of baking tin will do fine and it will rise the rest. But yeah, this is far too much, and you will see that in a second. So you want to pop that in the oven for 20 minutes, and as you can see, it all collapsed over the sides. To test the cake is done, just put a testing stick, skewer or a fork into the centre of the cake, and if that fork comes out clean, then it's all good to go. So I just wanted to show you my second batch. So this is my second batch. The mixture hadn't curdled, I just mixed it all the way through. I folded the flour in to make sure that we keep all of those lovely air bubbles inside. Then I made sure it could drop off the spoon and I spooned the mixture into the baking tin. You can now see that the tin is a lot emptier than it was before. It's about half full and it rose all the way to the top sort of perfectly, so exactly how you would want. And it didn't spill over in the oven, which I was very, very pleased about. So again, I tested the centre, the skewer came out clean, so I knew that was all done. You want to take it out, and as soon as you sort of can, you want to flip it over onto a cooling rack. And then you just want to slowly try and get the tin off of the sponge. If it doesn't come away, just leave it to cool for a little bit. It's probably easiest to do it when it's hot, but the cake might split in certain pieces, so maybe just leave it for a little while, come back to it, give it a good knock on the top. Just be patient with it, it will come out, especially if you put paper on the bottom. It might just be the sides that get stuck, so you might just have to do a little bit of a jimmy with a knife, but you should be absolutely fine. So this is one of the cakes that I have actually cooled in the fridge for about 30 minutes, just because I want them to be really cool. The cooler they are, the easier they're going to be to cut, but also they are going to dry out a little bit in the fridge, so don't leave them in there for too long, not wrapped. Just cutting off the sides, just because aesthetically I quite like that sort of naked cake look with the sort of no crust on the sides, and I think it just looks a little bit more like a bit like a sandwich, a bit like when you're cutting the crust off bread, it just looks a little bit more appealing. And I laid my letter on the top. Obviously you don't need to do this, but it does make it a lot easier to make sure that both of your cakes are exactly the same. And I just cut around. Obviously a T is quite an easy shape to draw, so I didn't really need a stencil for a T, but for something that is curved like an A or a J or a B or something, you probably will want to do a stencil, and you probably will want to take your time with it, probably a little more than I did. So what I did was I put all that leftover cake to the side, and I later used that to make cake pops. Now I am going to do a video on cake pops sometime soon, so watch out for that. So I cling filmed the cakes, put them some tinfoil underneath them just so they were a little bit easier to transport, and I took them to where the cake needed to be assembled. I also had a little bit of a nightmare with my icing, but once I had sorted all of that out, I was ready to start placing the cake onto the cake board. So we flipped the cake over onto the cake board, making sure that the sort of browner side was on the bottom, and I made sure to place some buttercream between the cake and the cake board. This just stops it from moving around so much. It's quite a fragile cake, so you do want to always just put some buttercream underneath the cake onto the cake board, and it will stop it moving around at all. Then using a piping bag and a round nozzle, mine was about 1.5 centimetre round nozzle, you want to just start piping sort of circles onto your tea all the way around. If you can sort of make them as uniform as possible, that would be perfect. Some of mine aren't great, I'm still getting the hang of piping this sort of thing. And it was a different buttercream. I'm actually using Italian buttercream for this cake instead of sort of normal American buttercream, because I just wanted to try something a little bit different. It was a bit of a nightmare to pipe, but when it's cooled in the fridge, it sets to this really sort of indulgent sort of mousse texture, and it was so nice in this cake really, with all the fruit and things that ended up on top. So definitely would recommend Italian meringue buttercream, and it just makes it a little bit less sweet when you've got that really sweet white sponge cake. So yeah, excuse the slightly dodgy piping at some places, but it was really good to practice actually on the first one, because you get a little bit better as you go into the second. So once you've piped all of your splodges onto there, then you want to grab your next layer. I just grabbed it on one of those cake spatulas, but I think having it in your hands would be fine as well, and layered it on top. I did just press them down a little bit just so that they were all nice and even, and you could see that all the dots were sort of coming through at the side, which I quite liked. And then again, you do exactly the same. You just pipe all of your icing onto the top layer. Now with the top layer, if you find that a couple go wrong, and that's absolutely fine, just remember where they were, and then you can just put some big decorations on there and nobody will notice. I find this really satisfying to watch. It was so satisfying to do at the time. Make sure your piping bag is completely vertical, and make sure you're applying even pressure also, because I did find that made a huge difference. And then it's decorating, and that is completely up to you. I made some macarons and decorated them with those. The person whose cake it was for really isn't a big fan of things that are too sweet, so I decided to go for a sort of fresher sort of vibe. So I went for strawberries, raspberries, some lemon curls, some mint leaves. As you can see there, I'm just silver foiling some macarons just to make it look a little bit fancier, because I did want it to look, you know, a little bit more extravagant than some of my other cakes. making sure that you've got a variety of colours and textures. Flowers always work really, really well. Chocolate always works well as well. And yeah, that is it really. The decoration is completely up to you, but it's such an easy cake to do. But I just think the way it turns out is really appealing. I just really, really enjoyed making it. But that is it. That is how to make a letter cake. Do let me know if any of you try it, and I probably will film maybe another one of these if I do get a chance to do a different letter, because I think that would be interesting to see as well. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you again next week for another video.